What's up, space pirates? This is your captain, the ever-charming Dr. Disaster. And things just keep getting worse for Dragon Age the Veilguard. It was bad enough that last weekend, which was their launch weekend, they were completely upstaged by the Monster Hunter Wilds open beta, whose numbers on Steam had BioWare likely screaming with jealousy.
I hate you!
But now, Dragon Age has been out for a week, and I have seen lots of people in my comment section and on Twitter recently very desperate as Dragon Age defenders trying to claim that we just need to wait for the second weekend of the game's release because actually, without the Monster Hunter Wilds beta to compete with, and with the positive word of mouth that they were absolutely sure that the game would get, they had the belief that Dragon Age the Veilguard was going to improve on their first weekend, which saw a peak concurrent player count of nearly 90,000 players.
You'll have to excuse my friend. He's a little slow.
Yeah, the game isn't going to hit anything even close to 90,000 this weekend, and I mean, as we covered just yesterday, even the gaming journalists are starting to turn on the game, or at least withdraw their vocal support, like Jason Schreier did on Twitter, removing this snarky little comment here. Sales have slowed down to a crawl, and more reports are coming in from people claiming that the game is being mass refunded. It sounds like, for example, there might be massive refunds for the game on the Xbox right now.
Where's my money?
This may not be a Concord level flop, but if you put things into perspective and account for the fact that this is a major video game franchise with a massive built-in audience, this still may go down as one of the biggest flops in a year filled to the brim with them. And I'm sure I can about imagine what all those Dragon Age defenders will say about this.
Ignorant, blood-sucking, dog-kissing, brainless, dickless, hopeless, heartless, fat-ass, bug-eyed...
Alright me hearties, make sure you like this video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and also, don't forget to follow me over on Twitter or X or whatever you want to refer to it as these days. I keep a list on there of games lousy with wokeness pinned to the account at all times for your reference. My handle over there is Dr. Disaster 1. But anyhow, let's take a look at this second weekend for Dragon Age the Veilguard. As I said before, the first weekend was extraordinarily disappointing for the game, despite what some of the people in the media class want to say about it, despite what all of the corporate ass-kissing, Dragon Age defending clowns want to say. Hitting less than 100,000 players on a game with this kind of budget and with this kind of pedigree is simply not acceptable. Here's the thing, people want to point at Concord as an example of what a flop actually looks like, and don't get me wrong, Concord is basically the king of video game flops. The budget was ridiculously high, the game came from Sony themselves, so the marketing was always going to be massive. There is simply no excuse for that game to have performed so badly, but it is skewing people's perception of what a flop actually looks like. Yes, less than 1,000 concurrent players on Steam is dreadful, which is what we saw with Concord, but that's not the norm, and it was never even close to realistic for a game like Dragon Age the Veilguard. I talk about this a lot, but out in the video game world, there is a massive group of people that I like to refer to as the cultural auto intake crowd. These are people who, when they see a game with a famous IP attached to it, like Final Fantasy or Star Wars, or, in this case, Dragon Age, but when they see a game like that, they just have the knee-jerk reaction, they have to go out and buy it. This is basically an impulse for them. It's FOMO, fear of missing out. They want to get in on the ground floor of what they assume will be a cultural experience that they must have. So, the idea that Dragon Age would look like Concord is preposterous. However, the game is still a massive flop. They couldn't hit 90,000 players on the opening weekend of the game, and this weekend they couldn't even crack 60,000. The retention rate for this game is extraordinarily low, as we've covered before, and that correlates perfectly with all of this information that we're hearing about the game getting refunded massively. There are tons of reports suggesting the game has been refunded in the tens of thousands, if not all the way up to hundreds of thousands on Steam. And as I've covered on this channel before, physical copies of the game are being sold back to video game stores at rates that many of these stores have never seen before. My contacts in the retail world, I know a lot of people who run video game stores, or chains of them I should say, but my contacts out there initiated contact with me to inform me of this, so this is a big deal for them. But let's put this Dragon Age failure of a release into more perspective. Yes, the game failed to hit 60,000 players on Steam in the second weekend, but that's still a lot of players, right? Well, sure, but if you look at the game's contemporaries and you see how the game is stacking up against similar titles in the genre, you can see how absolutely wretched this launch was for BioWare. This is the Steam chart data for Baldur's Gate 3. That game is currently sitting at 80,000 players, and at the time of this recording, this is not a peak time of day at all, and the game still hit damn near 100,000 players in the last 24 hours. In other words, a game that has been released for over a year now outperformed Dragon Age the Veilguard on its second weekend. One of the excuses I heard from people last week about why Monster Hunter Wilds ate Dragon Age's lunch is the fact that the beta was, of course, free. So they claimed that this wasn't a fair comparison. But I've got to ask then, what's the excuse for this? Baldur's Gate 3 isn't free. So why did Dragon Age fail to beat a game that came out all the way back in the fall of 2023? I look forward to hearing the desperate excuses from the Dragon Age defenders on this one. But I'm going to leave it there. Drop your mockery of BioWare and Dragon Age into the comment section below, and we will talk there.
Thanks for watching, me hearties. If you haven't already, your captain is inviting you to subscribe to the channel and become a part of the crew. Life as a space pirate may not be glamorous, but there's always plenty of booty.